You're a philosopher. You've been described as a Timothy Leary for the viral video age. What sorts of things are you waxing poetic about these days?
Pretty much every time I stumble upon an idea that captures my imagination, you know, something articulated in a counterintuitive way, right? A different spin on technology, a different spin on the future of humanity. That kind of gets my motors like going really, really fast.
Tell me about your series, Shots of Awe.
So Shots of Awe came from a desire to use media, to use cameras, to immortalize inspiration. I refused to accept that these moments had to be passing moments. I was like, no. I choose to film them, to record them, to capture them, and it was a way of gaining control over these experiences. And I could create an intersubjective communication with somebody else because I actually got to show you what it was like to be in my head when I had this epiphany. So Shots of Awe are philosophical espresso shots, this kind of condensed trailers for ideas.
What they hint at is the exception, a vision of something more.
Tell me about your process, your ritual, how you are able to come up with these stream of conscious riffs.
I started getting into this idea of flow states because I read this article that talked about doing brain scans on freestyle rappers when they were improvising. And then they did brain scans on them when they were reciting memorized lyrics. And what the studies found, a part of the brain that is responsible for our self-editing, our sense of self-consciousness, that part goes dim during the freestyle. So essentially, you're getting out of your own way. It's like that line in Black Swan that says perfection is not just about control, it's also about letting go. So I can have all my notes and my thoughts and my ideas and this and that, but then I go for the walk. I go into the woods, I go to Sea Ranch, California, I go to Big Sur, I go to some park. And just the stroll and the disconnection from distraction gets your brain daydreaming. When you're in daydreaming mode, you start to do a little bit of the lateral thinking. So you start connecting this to that to this, and you start to go through the aha moments. And if you are lucky enough to have the camera around, you're capturing that real-time flow. It's creativity happening in real time. I mean, it literally feels like channeling. So for me, I figured out how to create my flow state. And the results tend to be these riffs that people really love, and they're like, what? There was no script? That was a completely extemporaneous stream of consciousness. I'm normally kind of an introvert and kind of shy in most social situations. But if the conditions are right, like a flame, it emerges. We never have a true, accurate rendition of reality because it's all about our perception, our projections, our longings. Our romantic partners are creations, and we are the creators.
So you said if you can create that flow state, how do you create it?
I have found that the best way is to take yourself out of context. So a new experience, a new space, and a new place, so that I transcend what Michael Pollan calls the been there's and done that's of the adult mind. And I can enter the consciousness of the child. I can be in wonderment. I can be curious about everything around me. So rest, relaxation, novel spaces, novel environments, disconnection from the everyday, disconnection from your daily responsibilities, disconnection from your trivialities. Just a daydream space, a space to dream, to fuse cognition and dream.
What happens when you don't achieve that flow?
If it's not working, I become just highly anxious. Actually, irritable is probably the best word. I just kind of retreat. I withdraw.
Can you describe how it feels to be in that state?
It feels like unbelievable lucidity, instant recall. You know, just this capacity to explain what you're feeling and what you're thinking effortlessly.
Do we love harder? Do we squeeze tighter?
You just feel your best and you perform your best.
The minute you choose one thing, you've effectively said no to everything else. And there's a gnawing anxiety in realizing that you can't possibly have it all.
I'm like a reality hacker. I'm like literally hacking my ontological reality. And I'm studying how to trigger certain moods and modalities. And I'm literally playing with my consciousness so that I can feel how I want to feel when I want to feel it as often as possible.
How important is this ritual of achieving that flow state?
Hugely important. You are building the foundations for something magical to happen. The ritual is as important as chopping the wood and making sure it's dry before you light the fire. It's providing the necessary ingredients for your cognitive salad. It's very, 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 very important. Almost, I would say that it's everything.
So there's a fascinating organization called MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. This is a nonprofit think tank that advocates for the responsible investigation of psychedelic plants and chemicals and exploring their potential as tools for transformation, for interpersonal transformation, right? And this is a moment that we're living in now, right? We're kind of living through a psychedelic renaissance where all of a sudden people are starting to take these tools, these cognitive technologies that have been used for thousands of years a little more seriously. We're starting to take out the magnifying glass and stop being alarmist and actually paying attention and studying the potential of these tools, right? So there's a fascinating article written by Timothy Leary back in the 60s called Programming the Psychedelic Experience. And the idea here was that if you could successfully pattern and sequence the input signals that the subject would receive when he was on a psychedelic odyssey, you could literally assure functional output. You could almost guarantee a functional catharsis, that there would be value to the psychedelic session. And he described the psychedelic experience as a period of increased reactivity to stimuli, both from within and from without. So you are immediately plunged into a dialogue with your own subconscious. Things start to erupt. Things start to emerge. New patterns start to be perceived. And at the same time, the world becomes like a sense-around system. You know, the fidelity, the resolution of the input signals get boosted. So all of a sudden you are overwhelmed, almost eclipsed by the signals coming in. You are like a mind in flight. You are in orbital position. You are seeing the big picture. But if you don't have navigation, if you don't pattern those signals by carefully choosing beautiful music, by carefully curating excellent ecstatic poetry, your reveries that you can read while you are tripping, you know, controlling the environment, hanging around people whose company induces feelings of well-being. By patterning those signals, you're authoring the song, the soul surfing that you're actually doing. You know, people that engage in these mystical states are known as psychonauts. They're literally soul surfers investigating psyche through first-person experience. And there's all kinds of answers that we can find within. There's all kinds of spaces that we can explore. The new space is inner space, and it's fascinating. We need to look deeper into this mystery. We need to explore these numinous realms, these archetypical realms from within. We need to go Carl Jung in our own brains using a cocktail of chemical technologies that will thrust the body-mind into liminal spaces of exploration. We need to engineer inception-like dream spaces to explore, and the technologies are not all going to be external. Some of them are going to be internal. You know, computers are drugs, but drugs are computers. This is the essence, and this is why we should be open to this stuff, because it's absolutely fascinating. So check out MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies.
The word entheogenic means God facilitating, and it's this idea that tools and techniques of ecstasy can act as conduits, as mediation catalysts for encounters with the numinous. They are essentially God hacks, okay? It's this notion that we are able to tweak our subjective experience, to catalyze a shift in consciousness that leads us to a kind of Godmode. But as McKenna says, do not give in to the astonishment, the realization that reality is but a matrix of perception, that we can pierce that veil, that we can raise the stage is astonishing. It means we are ontological engineers. We are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams, indeed. We tumble down that rabbit hole. We reinscribe, redefine, re-edit the nature of that rabbit hole. The wonderland becomes our wonderland. The hero's journey becomes the map
for our own ecstatic illumination. And I love this notion. You know, Mircea Eliade, the philosopher, talked about techniques of ecstasy. He described shamans as literally ecstatic technicians of the sacred. This is my dream, right? This notion that we actually are able to create conditions, to create spaces for all of us to become ecstatic technicians of the sacred, that the passport to the numinous lies within, and that we can hack it, that there is a God hack. Oof, it's an entheogenic revolution. Boundaries are being dissolved. We are being reborn. It is our birthright. It is our birthplace. We are as gods. We might as well get good at it. Cognitive ecstasy, metacognitive ecstasy is within.